Alrighty, guys. This has been a weird one. I came across this TikTok here, and I just like looked for it again. If Joe Rogan, supposedly Joe Rogan's dad coming forward and like saying a bunch of things bad about Joe Rogan. So I found this link from a smaller content creator named Sporting Rush. Apparently, this is quite a little bit old. But it's called Joe Rogan's half-sister accused him of lying about their father. And then this is something that's, I believe, somewhat recent. So we can get a little context here of his dad coming out on TikTok or whatever. Pretty... I don't know too much of the specifics. So let's see what's going on. I mean, I had a deadbeat dad who was never in my life. So, you know, kind of... probably be a little biased there, but let's see what we got here.
Famous for his legendary UFC commentary, Joe Rogan's a man who's incredibly straightforward with his truth. Recently, he's been all over the news after he went on a record to label his biological father as an abusive man, and now his sister is opening up and telling her side of the story too. In this video, we'll go over what Joe's half-sister has got to say about her brother's claims and why she thinks he's lying. First up, Joe Rogan's sister says her brother's lying about their father. After Joe opened up about his traumatic past on his show, The Joe Rogan Experience, apparently word got out to his stepsister, Bridget Rogan Carcelda.
How could that possibly happen? Okay.
And she's not happy with...
How could she possibly find out? Based on Joe Rogan's like massive popularity.
With how her brother has labeled his father an abuser. She claimed that his claims of Joe Rogan Sr. and clarified that Daily Mail that he's indeed lying about the whole thing and that she's convinced Joe's mother is feeding him all those lies. Carcelda,
mother is feeding him lies about him personally experienced being abused. Okay.
Who's currently working in North Arlington, went on to explain what her father was like during their childhood. Unlike Joe Jr.'s claims, she remembers the generosity and love her father gave and having a fairy tale-like childhood. Bridget,
well, that's nice,
and her twin sister grew up cherished by their dad and recalls him as the epitome of a wonderful father. Joe Rogan Jr., on the other hand, doesn't
well, if it's a stepfather, maybe he treated Joe like shit and them well.
Have any good memories of their father growing up. During,
I mean, like my father treats my stepsister, not stepsister, excuse me, my half-sister better than me. Like, he abandoned my mother when she was 5 months pregnant, came back to the hospital, pretended to be there for him. And he pretended to be there for her and then like dipped again. And he wanted like custody to see me this time. My mom said, sure, you come, so all you have to do is come pick him up and you can do whatever, but he didn't want to do that. So he stopped caring about that. Then when I was, I think, 14, the craziest thing happened. My aunt was working at a car wash and a woman came in with the last name of my my sperm donor, which we call Matt and Seb, and said, and my aunt was like, oh, do you know such and such? And she's like, yeah. He's like, oh, my sister, I think has, marries that guy, somebody with that last name as well. And they got to talking, and it turned out that was my half sister's mother. So we ended up kind of like getting together, pass the numbers on, and we would hang out like once a month, my sister, my mother, and her mother, and yeah, and he treated her well and treated me like shit. He never like he was never in my life, never did anything for me, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So sometimes, and then there was a general consensus from both mothers that if it was a general consensus from both my mom and her mom that if like he knew about it, that he would stop talking to her. Like, that's how fucked it was that both of them came to that consensus. So
his podcast, he repeatedly told everyone about how horrible it was living with his father and that he would often physically abuse his mother. He also admitted that his father taught him toxic traits and that his relationship with him was barely existent during the time he lived with him. Following her parents' divorce, apparently it's been over 50 years since the father-son pair have even talked to each other. And because of this, Joe's interactions with his half-siblings has been non-existent too. Bridget opened up that her father had never been violent with them, and seeing her brother's claim came as a shock to the family. Up next, it's not just Bridget who thinks her brother's claims are...
So it sounds like he was sounds like... Okay, he's 55. They've been talking 50 years. It sounds like it was Joe first and the sisters after, so the dad remarried or something. Yeah, that makes sense to me, that they would both have different things. Apparently, my dad wanted a daughter so bad, and it's one of the factors as to why he didn't want to be around me. So it's life, man. I don't know, man. Okay. And Joe's an honest guy, so I tend to believe him, okay? He's not some, like, 15-year-old TikTok person saying that he has ADHD, you know what I mean?
False. Joe Sr. must have left his previous marriage behind when he married Bridget's mom because he never talked about his son and his daughters until the twins turned 19. And when he revealed the existence of a half-brother's mom because he never... Her brother's claims are false. Joe Sr. must have left his previous marriage behind when he married Bridget's mom because he never talked about his son and his daughters until the twins turned 19. And when he revealed the existence of a half-brother to his daughters, Rogan Jr. was at least interested in rekindling a kinship with them. The ghosts from his past...
Yeah, I feel that too. I'd never want to talk to my dad. It would have been nice if I had a relationship with my sister, half sister, but she's not interested, so it's unfortunate.
For too overpowering in the face of forming relationships with his estranged siblings, and he just left things as is. And that's completely justified if you ask us. Removing people who have been nothing but toxic to you in your area of growth is essential if you want to make peace with yourself. Joe spent a greater part of his childhood seeing his father torment his mother, and that obviously severely affected a child's perspective of relationships growing up. It's no wonder Joe refers to his childhood being dark times in his life, because spending your early years in a broken home is incredibly heartbreaking. But everything Joe Jr. had shared with the world about his father came crashing down when Bridget came forward with her reconciliations of the past, and if that wasn't backlash enough, another sister of Joe's chimed in and accused him of lying about the father's abusive past. Bridget's twin, Rosa, also opened up in support of her father and urged her brother to stop the lies.
I just feel like they're probably not lies. I don't know. Maybe he was young and received it as worse than it was, but to be honest with you, it doesn't seem like he was trying to say it to hurt his father. Like, I wouldn't come on here and show you the name and like the pictures of my dad or whatever, or my sperm donor, and be like, oh, this is the bad guy. But like, if I came forward to talk about it, it would be for myself, you know?
Also admitted that seeing Joe publicly degrade her father and say that he abused women and children made her sick, and that his comments really hurt her. What's more, even after everything that's happened, Joe's father still wants to reach out. For the past few years, Joe's been pretty expressive about his past. He's shared his side of the story often on his platform, and until recently, there was never...
I don't want a relationship with my stepsister. It's my fucking half-sister, you asshole. Shut up.
An objection to the claim that he made about his father. Well, that was until his half-sister started to publicly...
It's interesting that he didn't want a relationship until now, after he said negative things about his father. Like, I'm 32 years old, and not a single time has my dad ever tried to reach out and like get in contact with me. And maybe it will happen if I blow up and become famous. He's like, oh, that's my boy. Like Little Nicky. That's my boy. Is it Little Nicky? Or go the water boy. The water boy. That's my son. Bobby Bouthé, right? But yeah, even when I was like, not once when I was like younger, he visited me when I was 2 and 5. That's it. He had every right to go visitation. He just didn't do it. Like, my mother's mentality was like, give them visitation, and a lot of times the guys won't even take it, and that's how it happened here. He didn't really care to be there. And then when I was like 28 or 9 or something, he reached out to my mom to try to fuck my mom. Okay, he could have reached out to me and asked me to help him fuck my mom, but instead he reached out to my mother to try to slide in. I know, I saw the DMs. It was coy, trying to play it casual. Okay, so it's like, you know, why now? 55? Like, what's to rekindle at that point? And my mother never talked shit about my father. It wasn't until I was like 20 years old that I asked my mom about him that she finally started talking about him. You know, and she doesn't even talk about it in a way of like anger. She's just like, yeah, this is just what happened. You know.
Back up their father and make an effort to clear his name of the accusations. But despite everything, Joe's father still believes that by speaking out, he might have a chance at reconnecting with his estranged son once and for all, even after an odd 50 years. Joe Sr. also expressed that he wants to come onto Joe's podcast and finally clear his name in front of his son, who we're sure would avoid any interaction with his father, someone he once referred to as a sperm donor.
I would avoid it too. Yeah, sperm donor. Yeah, I wouldn't have money there.
In an email with his half-sister. In an interview with the U.S. Sun, Rogan Sr. told the reporters, quote, I'm 80 years old. I'm in the rearview mirror, but I would like to see him. I definitely would like to sit down with him because he needs to listen to my side of the story. He's never asked.
He's never asked. That's incredible to me, because what do you mean he's never asked? Where were you? Like, you're the dad, you know? Like, if I let's say I blow up next year and my dad's like, no, I was a good father, blah, 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 blah. You never asked my side of the story. That's not on me, bro. You're supposed to come and be a dad. That's not on me to try to reach out to you. It's on you to reach out to me. It's fucking crazy.
Fortunate memories of his father never allowed him to take a step forward and get the closure with him. As far as he's shared, he's only got violent flashbacks of his father, which includes painful memories of him beating his mom, and even...
At least my dad never beat me. He was just never around. So I actually won out. Let's be real here, okay? I won out. Like, I got a little bit...
picking up one of his cousins by their hair. Coming up, Carcelda has now made an official...
Carcelda? That's child abuse, just to name somebody that. What are you talking about?
Oprah request to provide her father's innocence. Allegations of abuse.
An Oprah request? Oh.
Abuse are never taken lightly, and that's exactly why Joe's claims of abuse with his father were front-page news most of the time. But this entire situation of who's right and who's wrong has no doubt steered these conversations in the wrong direction. On one end, we have a son who has nothing but horrible memories of his childhood, and the other end of the spectrum, we have two sisters who were never exposed to the alleged violent side of their father.
Are they autistic? Why are they on a spectrum?
And frankly speaking, seeing everyone just pointing fingers at one another and not providing sufficient proof is what makes the situation even more bizarre, but...
Well, you're never going to be able to substantiate or provide this proof. For all we know, Rogan just be lying about everything. He could just be lying to play up a victim complex. But I just don't believe that. Because, like, I tend to trust Joe Rogan. There's times where he gets stuff wrong, but I don't think Joe Rogan ever tries to lie about anything. So, you know, Like, I don't think we should be sending harassment campaigns to the dad or anything, but like, I believe it's more about like Joe Rogan, I guess you'd say. It's like it's more about like listening to Joe and his experience, nothing to do with the negativity of the father. You know what I mean? It's like when somebody, it's just like there doesn't have to be a hatred or anger against the person who did the wrong thing in this instance. Like, it's more about like what's the focus on like Joe Rogan, his experience, and like what created him as a person and made him as a man. You know what I mean? That's how I like to talk about my topic. And my dad makes the topic of it makes me angry, less angry every day. But that's what that kind of is.
It seems like Bridget Rogan feels confident in her statement, and that's exactly why she made an official Public Records Act request.
Wow.
The purpose of the Oprah request is to sort of kickstart a police investigation and look through the files of the accused to see if there's anything that would hint at any discrepancy
Police investigation? What the fuck?
or violent behavior from the alleged abuser. The daughters fully believe.
I'm not doubtful that 80-year-olds are fucking racist, abusive pieces of shit. Almost every old person I've ever met was kind of a piece of shit. Okay. All right, I don't know. I'm gonna say it, okay? Especially the cops. All right.
that nothing in their father's flies from his time as a police lieutenant posed a threat to him.
He was a police. Oh, bro, I'm not trying to be that guy.
Alleged abuser. The daughters fully believe that nothing in their father's flies from his time as a police lieutenant posed a threat to him.
Listen. I have friends that are cops, like legitimate high school friends, and they're great people who do the best to be good cops. But every single cop that I've met that's like 60 and older, unlike a family of like my former girlfriends and friends, have all been fucking violent racists. Okay, I don't hate cops, but like the older cops are just not good people in my anecdotal experience. You telling me that he was an 80-year-old police lieutenant back in the day when racisms and violence was more acceptable in police? I'm thinking maybe he did. I think he probably beat his wife. I'm sorry, because I don't hate police officers. Okay, but like, bro, there's this. I'm not going to be specific about anything, but I had a partner at some point, and their grandfather was a cop. Okay, and he was a rough guy. That's all I'm going to say. He was a rough guy. All right, and yeah, that's all. I don't want to get specific. I don't want to get into any specifics. Okay. I'm just saying. I respect the boys in blue. But the older they are, the worse people they are. Just a fact, okay?
Him and his record was
was he a Boston police officer? Oh, it's a little rough, man.
Clean. And turns out they were right, too, because the Oprah request came back and nothing in those files indicated Joe Rogan Sr. was indeed an abuser. So now the only question is, who's telling the truth? Is Joe being fueled by someone else, or are the sisters pushing a false narrative to save face? Only time will tell.
Hey, what's
Moving on to some other news that might interest you. First off, Arnold
Yeah, I know, like, the domestic violence is prevalent among police officers. I think it's historically more often than not, but yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is proud of Joe Rogan for his open-mindedness. Legend has it that if you got Arnold Schwarzenegger's seal of approval, then your purpose in life is pretty much fulfilled. During an episode of his podcast, Rogan talked about the 2018 documentary, The Game Changer, and how plant-based diets are extremely good for athletes. As a famous meat lover, we're not gonna lie, it was kind of odd to see him in
the fuck does that have to do with the dad thing?
favor of the vegan diet, but apparently his changed behavior impressed Arnold so much that he thanked him for being so open-minded about the diet and even expressed his pride for the comedian. See what happens when you try to appreciate things as they are without being too overly critical? Even Arnold likes that. Following up, Elon Musk's text with Joe Rogan has
what the fuck? Okay.
been submitted in court as evidence. So remember when Elon said he'd buy Twitter and then backed off the deal just weeks before actually getting down to business, saying that Twitter failed to provide him with enough evidence against bots? Well, things are getting complicated legally now, and prior to backing out of the deal,
What's that to do with Joe Rogan's dad?
a reporter from the New York Times revealed text between Joe and Elon, in which the two were pretty hopeful that Musk would get Twitter soon. And get this, they even plan to have a pajama jammy party together. But seeing how things are right now, there's no
a pajama jammy party. Incredible.
party or jams for Elon right now. Lastly, Rogan calls Conor McGregor crazy in his recent podcast.
Oh my god, thank you for putting me on top of this popcorn. I'll let her know.
It's no secret that McGregor's taken many shots at Khabib ever since his rival retired from MMA in 2020, and recently in a tweet to the Russian's good friend and
okay, this is like so relevant.
is over, and asked what minute and thank you much for watching forever, and they never forget. And that's a wrap for the video.
Okay, we can stop there. Well, let's go to this video of the actual dad, whatever.
Lied
I
about,
think this is somewhat recent, or I saw it somewhat recently.
lied about me. Your father. If you lied about your father, what do you give up the world? I'm tired of it, Joe.
I give up the world. Okay, well, maybe.
I just had enough. If you can't talk to me face to face, you're a punk ass.
Wow, incredible. It's a really good way to talk about your kid that you weren't there for.
That's all you are. You got all the money, everything, but you know what you don't have?
Like dad?
You don't have no heart, and I'm going to tell you something else you don't have. You ain't got two balls.
I like Joe a lot. We watched a video yesterday with Joe talking about fat people, and he was he's Joe, like, when it comes to like some shit, he's like really good. Like most people that look like Joe, very athletic and like very diet intelligent and like and all that, they usually look at fat people like they're real pieces of shit. And I know I'm fat, so maybe this is a bias, but the way he talks about it is like, yeah, it's not good to be fat, obviously we all know that, but it's not easy to lose weight, and like we need to have better conversations about it. That's basically what he's saying. Like he tries to get it, you know what I mean? Like when he's saying that he has no heart, I mean, this guy, he seems like a pretty decent empathetic guy. Okay, so I don't know, why is Joe Rogan that Italian? Because he's a scumbag. He's a fucking meatball. He's a meatball mouth. It's funny. You know, Joe's is a good. I think he's a good guy.
I want to talk to your father because you couldn't handle me. 81 years old. You couldn't handle this guy right here.
That's just a shitty thing to say. He couldn't handle you. It sounds like you couldn't handle him. That's why you weren't in his life in a positive way.
And when you said I beat up kids, I beat up other women, Joe Harris.
Probably beat up black people too, to be honest with you, if you're a fucking Boston police officer. 81.
When you farted in your house, they knew next door. How could I get away with that?
My real father was crazy. He was like a
Well, that's because like back then it was acceptable to beat the shit out of your kids and your wife. Like more acceptable, okay?
psychotic person. He beat the fuck out of my mother.
Like he would be the type of
You owe me a big apology.
Joe, you were taken away at a very young age, okay? Unfortunately, you did not get to grow up with a man that we were fortunate enough to grow up with. That might.
Well, that's good, because you want to know what? It sounds like the daughters had a great experience, and good for them. He raised his daughters well. Sounds like he didn't raise his son particularly well. The reality is that, like, you know, okay, good for him. Cool. That doesn't mean that, like, you, just because you had a different experience doesn't mean that, like, that experience didn't happen.
Kids are fortunate enough to grow up with.
Smacks women, beats the shit out of kids.
When he went to college for acting, he had to take up drama.
Beats the shit out of them. So I went from
Oh, he had to take up drama. That's so he has to be lying about everything. Gotcha. Okay.
living around these Italian, New Jersey psychopaths.
He said you
Listen, I have a lot of Italian friends that I enjoy a lot. I bust on Italians because, like, I'm friends with Italians, and like we say racist shit to each other. So I make like racist jokes about Italians all the time. But they can be a little extra, okay? It's a common joke that I have with my Italian friends that, like, if you see an Italian person, you can say anything racist and they will, and you automatically know that they're going to think it's funny and be on your side. Like, you could say anything like horrible.
Voice super
Hey,
chatted $1.49.
thank you so much for the donation, brother. And I'm not saying all Italians are bad people, but like, it's like they're, you know, they're little, Italians are rough around the edges. Okay. And old heads are rough around the edges too. Young people are like, you know, like night and day, I feel like, when it comes to being more respectful, in my opinion. Like when I used to work, with a lot of people, all the mechanics would talk about women and they'd be a little disrespectful. And like, that's that era. For us, we wouldn't really talk about like women and like, yeah, I want to fuck that bitch's pussy, like that kind of shit. We would just kind of just talk about life. It's just a little bit different, you know? Italian jokes should be a bingo spot, you know? I'm just saying, bro. Okay, sorry if I'm a little prejudiced against Italians, but I am German, and so there's plenty of prejudice to have against me. Okay, there's World War II, and there's scat porn. There's some fucking, and listen, they're both true. I'm sorry.
Italians in North Jersey were psychotic. A lot of these times, Joe, I'm 81 years old. I never met a psychotic Italian.
Well, yeah. As they say, real doesn't recognize real. Okay.
These crazy ass Italian psychopath Italians over here. You know what? We know one thing for sure. We know family. We're not caught up in the bullshit over there in Hollywood and all that, bro. Okay. We down to real roots. Okay. Wow. And this man is the real root, brother. You always revert back to your
This is so embarrassing.
roots, Joe. What you doing, man?
What you doing, man?
Sit on the other side of the table, my man. No cameras, no nothing, bro. And not me. Don't worry, I won't be here.
I'm sorry that all this happened to you. From the bottom of my heart, I am sorry.
Well, you're saying it didn't happen. So what do you mean you're sorry?
Because you will never know what you have missed out on in life.
Yeah, and that is the reason why he missed out on having a good dad. Remember that? Dads are, you know, as a parent, it's your responsibility to be in your kid's life, not the other way around, you know?
I love when I see the comments. They just want the money. They want the money bag. I have a box, Pandora's box.
Oh, shit! She's played God of War.
And if I open it, Joe, things would get really ugly. But see, we don't roll that way. A psychopath.
What does that even mean?
That's from New Jersey. We don't roll that way.
Italian psycho.
Oh, he wasn't a Boston police officer. Somebody got that wrong. Apparently, he was a New Jersey police officer, or maybe he just moved. I don't know.
Italian psychopaths. Whether or not you like it or not.
You're Italian.
They're not Italian psychopaths. They're just normal Italians. Okay.
He's 3/4 Italian. Whether or not he likes it or not.
I don't know. You better look in the mirror real quick. It's about time You become a man, Joe, and get to reality.
I don't know, man. I'm going to say, like, not for nothing, but I think Joe Rogan's like a really good, probably a good example of like a strong male figure that young men could look up to. I think he's a pretty smart guy. He gets things wrong, but who doesn't? That like means what he says and tries to do the right thing, and he speaks positively and empathetically about every topic that I've seen, or tries his best to do so. You really couldn't point to, in my opinion, a better man, especially since he's so popular and he hasn't lost himself in the popularity. You know what I mean? Like, you could tell when people kind of get very full of themselves. He doesn't seem to be that guy. So
You were wrong. You lied. We all know you lied.
So everybody's mindful on something, okay? You're looking at a real cop, real detective, okay? His record is squeaky clean. Let's just get that in perspective.
Joe is right
that makes it worse for you. I'm just letting you know.
in front of everybody. I'm looking at you and I'm pointing at you. Come here, sit down, and me and you talk. That's it.
No, that's
I won't tell nobody what was said. I'm a stand-up guy. I ain't like you making up stories so I can make
Joe actually is a stand-up guy because he's a stand-up comedian.
money. I don't do that shit, especially family. I don't do that. But I'm going to tell you something, Joe.
You tell him.
Before you go here and you come here and you sit, do me a favor. Go buy that set of balls.
The men that don't have their fathers
Ooh.
can wish that they can only sit beside them one more last time. I know that's me.
But Joe doesn't have a father because of his father. Like, I don't understand.
Coming out here just trying to connect this selflessly, brother.
Tell you what I believe in, Joe. Family is everything. Everybody else you meet, you think you're on Broadway, you think you're this, you think you're that. Everybody else is a bus ride. You get on and you get off. But
sometimes family sucks, man. I'm a very family-oriented person. I love my mother really instilled that into me. Family is very important, and I will always prioritize family. But there are some people who opt out of being your family member. When my father left my mother and never bothered to try to build a relationship with me, he walked away from my family. That's it. You know, and then when I met my wife, she walked into my family. Right? So now, like, my family is her family is my family. You know, family isn't all very squeaky clean, cut and dry. There has to be loyalty both ways. And it seems like this dad just wasn't a good father. You know, he ran away from, in some capacity, he ran from his own son. And now he's 81 and wants to rekindle a relationship. You know? The reality is that them talking shit about Joe Rogan is the most entertaining thing that in their entire lives. Okay? They probably sit at home like, Joe Rogan, I fucking hate Joe Rogan. Yeah, he was such a shitty son. Fuck, I'd smack him in the head sometimes. This is the only thing that they talk about. You know what I mean? But to be fair, he's the most loving New Jersey dad. That might be true. Okay? Yeah, just like Vin Diesel says, it's the family you choose sometimes. I think he said that. I don't know. He might have said that. I don't know. But yeah, man. That's why I'm like, my father isn't my family. That's why my sister, it hurts to say, isn't my family. Because they opted out. You know? It's unfortunate, bro. It sucks. You know? But my wife's my family. My mother-in-law is my family. Like, you know what I mean? That's how life works, man. It's just you're fighting an uphill battle because you were the dad that walked away in some capacity. So you can't say Joe's the fucking coward pussy because what does he owe you? Like, you have to go above and beyond. For every day that you are a deadbeat parent is another day that you have to overcome to get back in your kid's life. Okay? So
family is after all these years. They barked at me. I'm barking back.
Oh,
but
shit.
Joe, you know what you're gonna see?
Nothing.
You're gonna see the real me. Your real father now. I'm no joke.
Our families that were very, very close. No matter what goes on in our family, it has always stayed within our family. This whole Joe thing is something very new.
It's not your family, so.
To us. This is the only way.
Spiritually, of course.
To respond to him because we've contacted him privately. He doesn't want to hear what we have to say. He doesn't want to hear us. He doesn't want to hear the truth. But here's the thing.
I wouldn't want to hear what you have to say. That's probably not the truth. Yeah.
When you make an accusation, you have to back it up with proof. And when there's no proof, there's no truth to what you're saying. So we have a box full of proof, Joe.
So
we have proof from the Attorney General's office.
That means nothing to me. That's the thing. Like, I don't care. Like, first of all, there's not going to be enough proof to put him in jail, you know? But here's the thing. We know that he's not with his kid, and frankly, he's a police officer, probably did beat the fuck out of his wife. Honestly, don't doubt that. A police officer that's 81 now, back then, absolutely. And he was recalling a shitty experience. Doesn't have to be legal. Joe doesn't have to, like, why would Joe lie? I just don't believe he's lying. He's a credible person.
We have proof from the police department.
Wow.
We have proof from...
You mean the police department that we know objectively is like, well, is a literal, like, they're not kind of a gang almost? Like, they don't rat on each other at all. The police department's backing up a police, chief? Oh, wow, what a fucking surprise, idiot. Like, no shit. We got proof of the... Listen, I respect police officers, but let's not fucking pretend that police officers aren't basically, like, another fucking gang. That like, their police officers will fuck up royally and still not get fired. I mean, it's fucked, okay? Let's not pretend that, like, that is credible for you. The fucking police chief or whatever he was, police officer, you don't think that they're going to stand behind him just by virtue of him being a police officer? I'm not that stupid, okay? None of that means anything.
Legal cases. Whatever you said, my father's a psychopath. My father...
Do you think that kid bears some responsibility at some level to rekindle a relationship with a parent? Is it fair for the child to done forever with the parent? No, there's zero expectation on the child's responsibility. What do you mean? No. Always the parent. If the parent walks away from the child, it is 110% the parent's fault. And it is their responsibility to rekindle. That's just a fact. Like, I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, that was, I appreciate the question, but for sure, man, like, not, it's always the parent's responsibility, my brother.
Beat children. My father beat women. My father beat your mother. We have proof, Joe, that it never happened.
I don't
Real
care.
proof. Legal proof. Where's your proof? My father wants is 25 minutes alone with you. No.
I'm going to 25 minutes alone with me, Joey Garbanzo. Let's see what you want to say, Joe Rogan. All right. Only way that this should happen is if it's filmed and if Joey Diaz shows up with him. Okay. That's what I want to see. Joey Diaz versus Joe Rogan's father. That's what I want to see. I want to see Joey Diaz versus Joe Rogan's father in the UFC ring right now. That's what I want to see.
No cameras. Nobody around.
And Joe, do me a favor when we meet. Bring your report card from the college you went to, the drama school.
Okay.
I know you had to pass that test.
There's two parts of the story.
Oh, okay, 'cause he's faking
Okay,
it.
so for all you Joe Rogan fans out there,
Yeah.
Joe's been telling his side of the story for 27 plus years. Now it's time for the original Rogans to tell our side of the story.
The original Rogans. I need some
Joe
original Rogaine.
didn't want to address that because he doesn't know how. So we have to address it with you on social media.
Well, that's pretty much that.
I want Papa God to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.